Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I did plan to speak on Ali radiallahu anhu today because the last class we spoke about Uthman radiallahu anhu and what happened in the early stages of the Khilafah of Ali radiallahu anhu was obviously connected. But I just had a super hectic weekend. I was out of town. I flew back this morning and I haven't been too well. So we're just going to have to keep it a bit short and we'll inshallah go through Ali radiallahu anhu probably next week or the week after inshallah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada amma ba'd. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا رشدنا يا رب العالمين. قال الله تعالى والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected Muslims, there's a hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam describes something that will take place on the day of judgment. Before the decision is made or prior to the decision being made of فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ سُعِدُوا فَفِي الْجَنَّةِ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, those who are the people of righteousness before they're carried and taken to Jannah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says there'll be one person. And that person was a person who enjoyed every form of luxury you could have imagined in the dunya. But that luxury took them to the door of kufr and it took them to the door of disbelief. So despite having access to every form of wealth and having access to all the material things of the world, they will be dipped into Jahannam for merely a moment. And the moment they are dipped into Jahannam as a consequence of the active choices that they made, and they will be asked that, do you remember any goodness? Do you remember any luxury? And that one dip into Jahannam will make them forget a lifetime of luxury and comfort. And then a second person will be brought forward and that person had to experience every form of sacrifice in the world. The person had to experience every form of hardship and difficulty in the dunya. And then Rasulullah says that this person will be dipped into Jannah for a moment. Just a moment. We're not talking of eternity and we're not talking of a lengthy period of time. Just a moment and then they'll be taken back out of Jannah. And then the person whose entire life was full of difficulties, that person will be asked, have you ever experienced any hardship? Do you know what difficulty means? Do you know what it means to experience a calamity? And that person will say, Ya Allah, I don't know anything. The difficulties and calamities, I've forgotten everything because of that moment that I experienced in Jannah. Our companion of tonight is a companion who, generally when we speak about him, it's a lesson for the youth and the shabab of the ummah. By the qasam of Allah, the lesson from this, the life of this sahabi is not limited to the shabab and the youth of the ummah. It's not limited to the male and the men of the ummah. The lessons from this sahabi is extended to everyone who shares the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Because the hadith of the Rasul is clear. Whoever makes their objective Allah and akhirah, Allah will take care of their affairs in the dunya. Allah will place richness into their hearts. But whoever's sole objective in the journey of this dunya is dunya itself. Dunya becomes the priority. Dunya becomes everything that we chase after at the expense of everything else. Then what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? What's going to happen? You won't get that dunya and Allah will make life difficult for you. Dunya wasn't supposed to be the asal maqsood. We were taught we can enjoy the world. We can enjoy the ni'am of the world. But the moment there's a conflict between what I want and what I need, between what I desire and what I require, between my dunya and my akhirah, then at that moment we have to be ready to drop everything. Our companion of tonight was a youngster who wore the Gucci and the Versace of the time. Was a youngster who wore he had the drip of the time. He wore the best clothes you can imagine. People speak about going to these designer stores, whether it's Gucci, whatever it may be, Louis Vuitton, wherever it is. This Sahabi was a companion who inherited so much wealth from his father. his mother, he was her only child. His mother's name was Khannas, and he was so beloved to her that, forget designer, his clothing in its entirety, his entire wardrobe was custom made, tailor made. And if that doesn't surprise you enough, then even those people who get their clothes tailor made, they still go somewhere to buy their shoes. He had his shoes imported from Yemen, and his shoes were tailor made and custom made. There wasn't a youngster in Makkatul Mukarramah who enjoyed or who lived in the lap of luxury like he did. When he walked in a gully, it's a famous Sahabi and a famous incident. Wherever he walked, you would walk past later, you would walk past 3 blocks away, 4 blocks away, and you would know that Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh has been somewhere around. That's how distinct his fragrance was. And this youngster grows up in the lap of luxury, access to everything. But the reality of him was, he's growing up and he hears that in Makkatul Mukarramah, in Darul Arqam, there's a man by the name of Muhammad who's inviting people towards something. No matter how rich he was, today unfortunately what happens? When a person gets wealth, they become arrogant. When a person gains a degree, a master's, whatever it may be, a person becomes authority in their field, then they feel that that authority extends to every field. Then they feel they are an authority in the deen of Allah and the religion. And it becomes very difficult for them to want to learn. The last 2 Jumu'ahs we've been speaking about the story of Musa and Khadir. And one of the lessons that we took from the two is, no matter how much of an authority you are in your field, you'll always be ignorant in another field and you'll go to have to learn. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was the Nabi of the time. But when he hears Khadir has ilm that he doesn't have, and he goes and follows Khadir, and he tells him, Hal attabi'uk? Can I follow you? Can I spend time with you? Because some things are learned in the book, and others are learned in the suhbah of the scholars. Certain things, theory can be taught, but a doctor, after they graduate, they have to go residency. You can't stay in the classroom forever. The classroom will prepare you for the world, but in order to gain experience, you have to step foot into the hospital. If you're going to stay in that classroom forever, you can't excel. This Sahabi, he says that I was a young boy. I experienced all the luxury that you can imagine. But then I hear that there's a man by the name of Muhammad that's gathering in the home of Darul Arqam. And he says that the moment I heard it and I heard something is happening, my inclination was for me to go and present myself. So he says, I went one night, secretly I tiptoed and I came to the home of Al-Arqam. He says, I knocked on the door. And as I knocked on the door and I was received and the door was open, I saw the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I had never seen a more beautiful human than him. And I entered the room and I entered the home and I entered the apartment. And I see around the Rasul there's a few people. Not many people have followed his message. He says, I sought permission and I sat down in that gathering. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke to the companions and reminded them about Allah. The lesson for you and I was, when there was an opportunity, don't delay that opportunity for tomorrow. What do they say? Qissatun qasira, a very short story. The boy goes to bed, he retires to bed for the evening and he says, Sa'atubu ghadan. I'll make tawbah to Allah tomorrow. I'll change my life tomorrow. I'll fix that relationship tomorrow. Nama wa lam yastayqidh. He went sleep and he never woke up ever again. When Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh hears that the Rasul has gathered, he never waited till tomorrow. He never said, let me wait and see what happens. Let me wait a week. Let me give it a month. Let me see if this Muhammad gains traction in the community. Immediately he knocked on the door and he sat down. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explains the deen of Allah to him. And then he says that when the Rasul spoke to me, it struck a chord in my heart. Sometimes you will come to the masjid. Maybe Sheikh Yahya Rodis was here this weekend. And he said something that resonated with your heart. And you felt that, you know what, this needs to change within me. But then the moment you walked out your door and you got in your car and the radio was blasting or you received the phone call, that thought that came in your mind that something needs to change gets put to the back. You get focused and busy with life and you're unable to execute whatever needed to be done. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh taught you and I the importance of priority. Today the ummah doesn't understand what's supposed to be my priority. We went for a nikah now in Connecticut. And the discussion was the concept of priority. Sometimes when a person gets married, it's not supposed to be that you got married, now your friends never see you ever again. Nor was it supposed to be that you got married and you don't give your wife time and you're always with your friends. There has to be a healthy balance. You know, some people, they get married, they go missing. Other people, they're still there, but healthy balance. Giving أعطي كل ذي حق حقه. What did the Rasul say? Give every person their right. Every person their right. On the topic of marriage, there was a young boy who entered a competition. And as he got to the final, they asked him, what's the difference between the word complete and the word finished? So for you and I, these two words are mutaradif, they're interchangeable, they mean one and the same thing. So the young boy says to the judge that, let me explain to you by way of example. If a man marries the right woman, he's complete. If a man marries the wrong woman, he's finished. And if the right woman catches him with the wrong woman, he's completely finished, he's done, game over. So he says that I went into Darul Arqam and the Rasul spoke to me. I never waited to go home on the spot. I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And I accepted the deen of Allah. If you and I thought living in the West as Muslims was going to be easy, then we need to think again. If you and I thought living in the West would mean that we're going to have to make sacrifices and it's going to be difficult, and we weren't prepared for that, then we need to prepare for it. Because there was no one who had to make a greater sacrifice than this companion. And as he's preparing to leave, Rasulullah calls him close. In the Quran, Allah speaks about Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam sees a dream, and when a youngster sees something or something good happens, they want to tell the world. Today, a youngster does anything, the first thing they do is on their social media. The father calls Yusuf, لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا. My boy, you're young. You've seen an amazing, powerful dream. And I know you want to tell your brothers, but as a senior, as an elder, let me tell you as a father, this moment in time, don't mention the dream to your brothers. So the Rasul calls Musab and he tells Musab radiallahu anh that your mother hates Islam. Your mother's going to be very unhappy. So for the time being, keep your Islam hidden. Keep your Islam concealed. Don't publicize your faith and your religion. Hikmah and wisdom needs to be employed when we deal with new Muslims. When a brother accepts Islam on a Friday and you see him for the first time, don't tell him, brother, no more alcohol, no more pork, no more clubbing, no more this, no more. You're going to scare him away. Rasulullah taught you and I, when you deal with a new Muslim, you have to have hikmah. Employ wisdom. So Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh exits from Darul Arqam and his Islam is hidden. He's praying in secret. He's worshipping Allah in private. He's hiding from his mother to ensure that she doesn't see him. But then there's a man by the name of Uthman bin Talha radiallahu anh, and he notices that Mus'ab is going to Darul Arqam too often. Mus'ab is knocking on that door and disappearing sometimes for hours on end. So Uthman bin Talha goes immediately to the mother of Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh, and she informs him that your son, I think, has accepted the deen of Islam. That day when Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh went home, it was a different story. That same mother who showed him so much love and compassion, she calls him and she says, oh Mus'ab, I've been told by someone in our community that you've accepted Islam, is it true? And Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh told you and I what it means to be honest. At that moment he had to disclose. He said, yes, my mother, I've accepted Islam. And his mother now, she says that I wanted to beat him. I wanted to hurt him. He says that my mother was about to physically hit me. But my love for her, I never allowed her to do so. Today we feel when we're parenting, especially maybe in the subcontinent or even beyond that, we feel the only way to do tarbiyah is to beat our children or to beat the child. And then we come with these fabricated narrations that if you go to madrasa and your ustad hits you, then that place or that part of your body won't ever burn in the fire of Jahannam. Fabricated narrations. Yes, the Rasul did say, we have to look at it in a balanced way. Rasulullah said, O Dan, command your children to pray when they are 7. Then what's the choice of the words of the Rasul? He said, physically discipline them when they are 10. That doesn't mean you abuse them. That doesn't mean that's the first resort. So she says that I loved him and I wanted to extend my arm to physically discipline him, but I kept my arm within, and she says I had a conversation with him. And I told him, oh Mus'ab, you either leave the deen of Islam or I'm going to imprison you, house arrest. And you won't be allowed to leave this home. Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu tells his mother, my mother, you do what you want, but Islam is in my heart. And then he is held within a chamber and there's a guard placed over him. He says that my mother limited my access to food. The clothing that I had was slowly being taken away. The father gives the boy the credit card when he goes to college. And if he does something, what happens? The father says, first thing, your first consequence is give me back the credit card. There was a kid that went to college and he wrote a letter to his dad. You know, unfortunately today people don't communicate through letters. The Rasul ﷺ, he gave a lot of da'wah in letters. Now today you can say maybe messages and writing is the same thing. One boy goes to college and he writes a letter to his dad. And he normally never writes a letter. So he never knew what to say, so he just kept it short and sweet. He said, no man, no fun, your son. No man, meaning no money, no man, no fun, your son. And he was hoping that his dad would receive it and send him some money back. But the father responded, too bad, too sad, your dad. He never gave him anything. So Musab says that I was held captive. And my day began with La ilaha illallah, and my night began with La ilaha illallah. My morning began with remembering Allah, and there was no salah at the time. He says, one day the guard that was around me fell asleep, and I heard that Sahaba are being allowed and given permission to go from Mecca to Abyssinia, Habasha, to escape the cruelty of the Quraysh. He says, immediately I made a decision and I crept away and I slipped away and I went to Habasha, to Abyssinia. He says, when I went to Abyssinia, it was difficult. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh isn't used to driving a Prius, he's only driving a Lamborghini. Now you're telling him, you got to walk. Now you're telling him, you got to live in a foreign land and eat scraps of whatever's left over. He's not used to the lifestyle. But the reality was he made that sacrifice regardless of how difficult it was for him. He says, I went to Habasha and it was difficult. And I had a longing for the Rasul. I never wanted to be away from him. And so we heard a rumor that in Makkatul Mukarramah, the believers have accepted, the Quraysh have accepted Islam. Makkah is safe. We are allowed to come home. So he says, I was from those people who chose to go back to Makkatul Mukarramah. He says, I come back to Makkatul Mukarramah. I haven't been here for a lengthy period of time. But when we came, we realized that the rumor was false. Quraysh hadn't accepted. Makkah was still as difficult as an environment for the believer as it had always been. What do? He says, I entered the city of Makkatul Mukarramah, and the first person I went to was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The love this companion had for the Rasul was unique and amazing. In this month of Rabi'ul Awwal, every other week you're going to be having a hearing of a seerah conference here, a seerah program there. The themes of the Jumu'ah khutbahs and the lectures and sermons are going to be the love of the Rasul. But this happens every year. What happens after Rabi'ul Awwal? What happens on the conclusion of Rabi'ul Awwal? What happens beyond that? Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh taught you and I that your love for the Rasul has to transcend beyond words. It has to transcend beyond the lip service. It has to transcend beyond saying, I love the Rasul. Because there's been people who in history had the name Muhammad, but never died as Muslims, or were never Muslims. The Rasul says, he says, I went to meet Rasulullah. After the Rasul, I went home. And my mother received me. She hadn't seen me in a while, and she loved me dearly. I was her only child. And then he says that as I entered the home, my mother told me, oh Musab, are you coming into Mecca and coming to see me first, or did you go visit someone else before me? So Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh says, oh my mother, I went to see Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now thereafter I've come to visit you. So his mother showed some apprehension that, why did you go meet Muhammad before you came to meet me? I'm your mother. And then he tells his mother that, oh my mother, the love of the Rasul for me is more important than the love of anyone and anything else. Yes, you gave me birth and you brought me into the realm of the world. But my true birth was given by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My spiritual awakening happened by the Rasul. You gave me a physical existence in the dunya, but my Rasul gave me a reason to live. My Rasul gave me a reason to wake up every morning. My Rasul gave me a reason to breathe, because he took me min al-dhulumati ila an-nur. He took me from darkness into the light. And then the mother again, she tries to have a conversation with her boy. Oh my boy, leave Islam. Oh my boy, it's time for you to leave the tradition of Muhammad. It's time for you to leave the faith. He says, oh my mother, my sentiment remains the same. I will never leave Islam. And after this, she says to him, if you don't leave Islam, I'm gonna imprison you. But now Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh, he's grown up, he's older. He says, oh my mother, if you imprison me, then the person who you will keep as a guard over me won't last more than 24 hours. You will be performing his janazah. He's not going to make it, because I'm not going to tolerate being kept and being locked. It's time for me to now be side by side with the Habib sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the mother says, if you won't allow me to imprison you, then I will take away all the luxuries that I've extended to you. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu says, my mother took my clothes. My mother took the perfumes that I had. My mother took my access to wealth that she had given me, and she stripped me away of everything. And I left that home that day having come to a halt in my relationship with my mother. You know, today you and I, as people who are born into Muslim families, we don't understand the struggle of the non-Muslim. I have a brother in Boston, he's a Reaver, and he chose an Islamic name after years. His name was Brad for the longest time. And then after years, everyone used to tell him, bro, when are you going to choose a Muslim name, Muslim name? He said, I haven't found the story of a companion who resonates with me yet. I'm waiting, I don't need to rush. And finally, he chose the name Musab bin Umair, the entire name, Musab bin Umair. And he says, I resonated with this Sahabi. And this friend of mine, this brother of mine, one day he went missing from the masjid. Probably a week he never came. After a week, some of the brothers saw him and they asked him, where you been? Because he's a regular in the masjid. And he said, you know what, my mother passed away, and she passed away without Islam. And recently I asked someone, can I make dua of maghfirah for my mother? And the answer they gave me, which is the correct answer, is no, you cannot. And he said, that broke me. Internally, it wasn't the same. Internally, I couldn't live with the reality that I will wake up at the time of tahajjud and raise my hands and I'll make dua for the ummah of the Rasul, and on top of that list, I'm not allowed to make dua for the guidance of my mother or for Allah to exercise His clemency and His mercy on my mother. He said that broke me. I was at a critical point where I never felt like coming to the masjid. That's why you haven't seen me. But then he said, I remember the story of Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. Musab bin Umair, when he walked out those doors that day, that was the end of his relationship with his mother. Yes, he tried to extend courtesy and beyond, but that was the end of that relationship. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu is now walking in the streets of Makkah al-Mukarramah, and it's not the same man. It's not the same person that you see. Many times when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu later on, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would cry profusely. And he would say, I remember this boy. I remember him. I remember how he used to live. I remember the lifestyle that he had. I remember anything he wanted, his mother gave it to him, first class, best car, best everything. And then the Rasul would cry profusely and say, he left everything for the sake of the deen of Allah. What sacrifices are we making? What sacrifices are we truly making? And then he says, I lived in Makkah al-Mukarramah, and 11 years after Nubuwwah, the people came from Yathrib to Makkah al-Mukarramah to perform Hajj. A very small group of people. And Rasulullah's system was, at the time of Hajj, when people would come to the Kaaba to perform their understanding of the pilgrimage, Rasulullah would carry out da'wah in those days. Rasulullah he maximized the opportunity, and he went to every single person individually and gave them da'wah. Rasulullah sees that these youngsters that have come from Yathrib, and he speaks to them. And as the Rasul engages with them, and the lesson for you and I is, every one of us, wherever we go, we are a da'i ilallah. Whether you like it, you dislike it, you accept it, you deny it, the moment you walk into work and your name is Muhammad, Ahmad, whatever it is, you are a da'i ilallah. Because Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, at this time 6 people come from Yathrib. When they come from Yathrib, Rasulullah gives them da'wah. They accept Islam. And then Rasulullah chooses Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, because they say to Rasulullah that, Ya Rasulullah, we want to learn Quran, send someone. Send someone from Mecca to Yathrib to Medina, and we want to learn. So Rasulullah calls Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. And he says, oh Musab, you will be tasked with the responsibility to go to Medina to Munawwara. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu married Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu ta'ala anha. Who was Hamna bint Jahash? She was the sister of the wife of the Rasul, Zainab bint Jahash radiallahu anha. So he says that I went to Medina to Munawwara. When he went to Medina to Munawwara, he's going with few people to a city that he doesn't know. To a people that he doesn't know. When you walk into your job for the first day, you are an ambassador for the deen of Islam. Non-Muslims will read the newspapers. They'll watch every media outlet. They'll watch the news. They won't ever pick up the Quran. Very seldom will they pick up the seerah of the Rasul. For them, Islam is you. How do you speak? How do you conduct yourself? How do you carry yourself? What courtesies do you extend to those around you? Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu comes to Madinatul Munawwara, and he starts giving da'wah to people. He goes to one person, and as he's there with his host, there's a man from the leaders of Madinatul Munawwara that walks towards him. And as he's walking towards him, he has his spear. He comes to Musab and he asks Musab, what are you doing? You have to leave Madinatul Munawwara. You're no longer allowed to reside in our city. You're coming and creating friction within our people. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu says to him, if you want me to leave, I'll leave. I will be more than happy to comply with your command. But all I ask is you lend me an attentive ear. Allow me to hear what I have to say and then decide what you need to do. So then at that moment, Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, he gives da'wah to this person. And as he gives da'wah to this person, and he speaks to him about Allah, and he speaks to him about Islam, Usayd bin Hudayr radiallahu anhu at that moment accepts the deen of Allah. Then he says to him, I'm going to take you to someone else. If this person who I will take you to accepts Islam, half of Medina is yours. They go to Sa'd bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. He gives him da'wah. How did he speak to him? He spoke to him about Allah. He accepts Islam. Within a very short period of time, the majority of the inhabitants of Medina have accepted Islam. You've been at your job for how many years? How many people have accepted Islam at your hands? How many people have considered wanting to become a Muslim at your hands? We will be mas'ool indallah. We will be questioned by Allah that you resided in these lands that were majority inhabited by non-Muslims. Did you give da'wah? Did your akhlaq maybe want them to consider Islam? Because Musab went to Madinatul Munawwara, and through his akhlaq, through the way he treated people, through the way he spoke to people, people wanted to listen to him. Sa'ad bin Ubadah radiallahu anh accepts Islam. Sa'ad bin Mu'adh accepts Islam. Asad bin Zurara, they all accepted Islam. A year later, Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu comes with 70 people to Makkatul Mukarramah, to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is amazed. Oh Musab, you're a young man. How were you able to infiltrate that community and have a positive impact on them the way that you did? He says, Ya Rasulullah, these people want to take bay'ah at your hands. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives them the bay'ah. And then when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to Madinatul Munawwara, a Jumu'ah had already been performed in Medina, and that Jumu'ah, the first Jumu'ah of Medina, was performed by none other than Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. They come to Madinatul Munawwara, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrates. The Battle of Badr, Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu is present in that battle. The third year of Hijrah, the Battle of Uhud takes place. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu was given the responsibility to hold the flag of Islam. The person who held the flag was an indication that as long as that flag stands, that group and the army are victorious and successful. The moment the flag falls is an indication to the conclusion of that expedition. Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu says, the day of Uhud came, and my Rasul, my Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, gave me this flag to hold. He says the command was simple. The archers, 50 archers on that hill, you don't move until I don't say so. Whatever you see happening down below, you are not allowed to leave your station and your maqam. Whatever you witness, you stay. In the initial part of that battle, we all know the Muslims were successful. The disbelievers turned on their heels and were fleeing the battlefield. Some of the youngsters on that hill, they see that the Muslims and the Sahaba and the companions are going to receive and take the spoils of war. So they decided that we don't want to miss out. And the Rasul, he meant that once the battle is concluded, we can come. So 40 out of the 50 come down. They ran for that very same thing that Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh left behind him. What's the hadith of the Rasul that we began with? Whoever makes dunya their objective, you'll always be running after the dunya. Whoever makes akhirah their objective, whoever makes Allah their objective, the dunya will come. Inna ash-shaytana ya'idukum al-faqra wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha. Shaitan is promising you faqr. He's promising you poverty. He's promising you the lack of the lack of wealth. But what does Allah say? Wallahu ya'idukum maghfirah. Allah is promising you forgiveness wa fadla and access to wealth. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu says that these archers came down. Khalid bin Walid, of course, famous. He never knew, he wasn't a Muslim. He comes, they martyr the 10 Sahaba on that hill, and now there's chaos on the battlefield. Ibn Qamiyah, one of the stronger and more physically capable disbelievers, he starts to chant the slogan, Qatalna Muhammad, Qatalna Muhammad. We have martyred and we have killed Muhammad. And this is the slogan that's being chanted in the camps of the disbelievers on the Ma'rika and on the plains of Uhud. And at that moment, some Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they hear this, and now there's an internal conflict. And Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh is mounted on his animal. In terms of physical appearance, he was very, very similar to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A man whose life began with leaving every form of luxury to the side for the sake of Allah. Like I said many times, we are allowed to own nice things. Those nice things, we just can't allow them to own us. You can enjoy what Allah has given you. The examples from the lives of Sahaba are rich, filled with examples of Sahaba who are wealthy and enjoyed what Allah gave them. But the moment what you own begins to own you, that's when it becomes a problem. The moment what you own starts to take you away from the masjid and from the deen of Allah, then it's a problem. It takes you away from learning the deen of Allah, now that's a problem. But till then, enjoy it. That was the sunnah and the seerah of the Rasul, that he had people around him that enjoyed dunya. Musab bin Umair says that now people are running towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Rasul he's being attacked, he's a prime target. If he falls, the battle is over. And at that moment, Musab bin Umair radiallahu anh starts to chant the takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And he's quoting the ayah, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. And he's running with his animal directly in opposition to the direction of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if the Rasul was north, he's running south, and he's running in every direction other than the direction of the Rasul. And they see someone that's trying to flee the battlefield in their minds. And then they think that that's Muhammad. So immediately a group of the disbelievers, majority of them, now go after Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. And as they go after Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, the Rasul ﷺ now, people are not going after him. Sahaba are now going to him and tending to him and protecting him. And Ibn Qamya goes to Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. What a wretched individual he was. And Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu is holding the flag of Islam, and he cuts his arm. And Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu then takes the flag with his other arm, and Ibn Qamya cuts his other arm. And then what does Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu do? When we think of these people they weren't infallible like the prophets. Sahaba were people who lived lives like ours. They made sacrifices like we need to learn to make. The historians write that when his both arms were gone, he kind of held that, whatever was remaining of his arms, he took the flag and he held it on his chest. And then Ibn Qamya releases an arrow or a spear straight into his chest. What was the words on his tongue? وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And that spear strikes through the chest of Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. And finally this lion of Islam collapses to the ground. He collapses to the ground, his life is taken. The battle of Uhud is concluded, and Rasulullah is walking through the battlefield. It was a very difficult day in the life of the Rasul. It was a very difficult day in the life of the Rasul. He sees Hamza radiallahu anhu. What did Rasulullah one ayah was revealed unto the Rasul, the ayah of Surah Mujadala. لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله. You will never find people who believe in Allah allow those who stood as opposition to the deen of Islam to be close to them. وَلَوْ كَانُوا آبَاءَهُمْ Even if it was their fathers. Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu, in one of the battles, he came face to face with his father. When he came face to face with his father, it was iman and kufr. And he knew that the reality was, yes, it's my father, but here it's about defending the deen of Islam. And he was responsible for the death of his own father in the midst of that battlefield. وَلَوْ كَانُوا آبَاءَهُمْ أَوْ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ Even if it was their children. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, on the battle of Badr, he says, where's Abdul Rahman? At that time, his son Abdul Rahman hadn't accepted Islam. He says, oh Abdul Rahman, where are you? You want to stand with the disbelievers? I will stand and defend my Habib sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Because the relationship of Iman is far stronger than any other friendship, relationship, bloodline, whatever it may be. And what did he say? He says to his son that, if I saw you on the battle of Badr, his son said to him, oh my father, on the battle of Badr, I was kind of running away from you. I never wanted to see you because I never wanted to be the reason for your death. And the father says to him, oh my boy, you were stood in the opposing camp attacking my Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was looking for you because I would have never allowed you to attack my Rasul. You would have been finished before you even knew what was happening. وَلَوْ كَانُوا أَبْنَاءَهُمْ أَوْ إِخْوَانَهُمْ Scholars of tafsir have written, Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, in one of the battles, probably it had to have been Badr, he was responsible because his brother tried to attack the ummah of the Rasul. And this ikhwa, this brotherhood amongst the ummah was stronger than anything else. He says that I was responsible for the death of my brother because I had to protect my real brothers. In one of the battles when one of his brothers was held captive and he comes from a rich family. And he tells the Sahaba that, this is my brother and he comes from a wealthy household, charge a larger ransom. And then his brother says to him, oh Musab, but we're brothers. Why are you putting me on blast like that? They don't need to know I got money. He says, no, you're not my brother, these are my brothers. These are my brothers. These are the people who I will sacrifice everything for. Rasulullah ﷺ scaling the battlefield of Uhud, and he sees Hamza radiallahu anhu and the Rasul is broken. His uncle, he's broken. He takes a few steps and he sees Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. And then the Rasul quotes the ayah of Surah Al-Ahzab, مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ رِجَالٌ صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. From amongst the camp of the Sahaba, there were those people who were waiting for martyrdom and they were blessed with martyrdom. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ. And there are still those who want to show Allah that, oh Allah, my allegiance is to you. My dear respected Muslims, we don't need to make the type of sacrifices that they made. But every one of us in our personal life can change something. Your why needs to be strong enough. Why are you going to do what you are going to do? Why will you make the change that you change? Why will you make the sacrifice that you will make? If your why is strong enough and you believe in it and it's definitive and it's solidified, then I promise you that sacrifice will become easy. But if your why isn't strong enough, if your foundation of wanting to make that sacrifice isn't strong enough and you don't know why you're doing what you're doing or you endeavor to do what you want to do, nothing will ever change. Rabi'ul Awwal will come over and over and over again, but nothing will change. The Rasul ﷺ, he recites this verse and he's crying at the death of Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. Some women came to the battlefield to find their spouses. Some women stayed at home waiting for the Rasul to deliver the news of what happened. Rasulullah ﷺ goes to the home of Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu ta'ala anha. And he tells Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he informs Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu ta'ala anha with regards to the death of her brother Abdullah ibn Jahash. And Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu anha obviously is emotionally moved. Then he informs her with regards to the death of her uncle Hamza radiallahu anhu. And again Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu anha is moved. And then he informs Hamna bint Jahash that your husband Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu also never made it. And she starts to cry. And she's broken. And she was given, imagine, a lifetime of sadness, sad news. Your brother, your uncle and your husband all gone. Hamna bint Jahash radiallahu anhu was so broken, it took her a long time to get over the death of her husband Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. It took Sahaba a long time to recover. Why? Because now they're preparing for his janazah. And the boy and the young man who was he was him. You know, in today they say he was him, he was that guy. Every trend, anything that was trending, he was that person. They say, in غُطِّيَ رَأْسُهُ بَدَتْ رِجْلَاهُ. If we cover his head, his feet are exposed. If we cover his feet, his head is exposed. There's not enough cloth. A boy who one day probably never wore the same garment twice, who was spoilt for choice, who had a closet the size of what we can't even imagine. If we cover his head, his feet are exposed. And the Rasul is crying, Sahaba are broken. And then finally the Rasul says, cover his head, and then just take some grass and some greenery and cover his feet with that. And that was the end of this Sahabi. The Sahaba was so moved by this companion that one day someone came to Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu and they bought him food. And Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, as he was bought that meal, he pushed it away. He pushed it to the side. And he says, how can Abdurrahman eat this meal? How can Abdurrahman enjoy this meal when I know what sacrifice my brother Musab had to make? How can Abdurrahman enjoy the ni'mah of this food when I've seen the sacrifice that my brother Musab made? How? I feel that it doesn't feel okay. It doesn't feel right. How are we going to answer to Allah? He says that if Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu was taken from the world, and that was a sign that Allah never lived to see the day where the Muslim empire grew as it grew. Some Sahaba used to say, Khabbab radiallahu anhu, one of the first people to have been subjected to the worst punishment, he used to say, I worry for myself. Why? Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu passed away before the glitter and the glamour of the world opened itself on the ummah. So his Jannah was guaranteed, he was protected. And then he says, but the ummah now, and this is in his time, imagine today, he says, Allah is opening up the dunya for us. Does that mean that we are being given our reward for our sacrifices in dunya and maybe we won't get anything in akhirah? Does that mean that because Allah has given us now and we're eating these delicious meals and we're enjoying this food that we have, does that mean that there's nothing reserved for us in akhirah? Because Musab never enjoyed this. Musab never, forget enjoy it, he never seen it. And with those words, Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu pushes the meal away. That's who they were and the sacrifices that they made. We make dua to Allah that we learn something from these people. Our children learn something from these people. We do tarbiyah, and the household is a household where these names are common. Because today the ummah and the young people of the ummah don't know these people. They don't know the likes of Musab. It's just a name. What was his story? What did he stand for? What changes did he make to it? We don't know. You and I will have to stand in front of Allah. Musab bin Umair can easily say, Ya Allah, one hand in you, I gave this and I gave this, whatever. What are you and I going to answer? What will we say? Every one of us today, when we go home, we ask ourselves the why. Whatever changes that we assess in our lives that need to be made, why do we need to make them? If the why is strong, I promise you that change will become easy. But if the why is weak, And if the why is absent and you don't know why the change needs to be made, the change will never happen. Musab bin Umair taught you and I that when you know something, act upon it immediately. Instantaneously, he accepted Islam. There will be sacrifices that will have to be made. But at the end of it, if Allah is saying that Jannah is yours, Jannah is, what did Allah say in that verse that you have to go maybe against your own family members? أولئك كتب في قلوبهم الإيمان وأيدهم بروح منه ويدخلهم جنات تجري. And then the surah concludes أولئك حزب الله ألا إن حزب الله هم المفلحون. The group of Allah, the jama'ah of Allah will always be successful. Sometimes in giving, you're receiving. Allah doesn't take, Allah replaces. Allah doesn't take, Allah substitutes. But we have to be willing to give whatever we need to give up for the sake of Allah. The youngsters of today, look at in London it's common. On the day of Eid, these youngsters hire these fancy cars, in East London especially. And what do? They put gas in the car and they'll drive up and down that same road on the day of Eid after having fasted the whole of Ramadan, blasting music. We need to introduce them to who Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu was. And I promise you, even though they may do it again, the next time they go to rent that car to do what? To blast music and drive up and down the same road, they'll think about it. Perhaps they may even abstain from it. Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu was a Sahabi who was very unique. Imagine on the day of Qiyamah when Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu brings the tribe of Daws, and when Ja'far radiallahu anhu brings the people of Habasha. Every person that goes to Madinatul Munawwara till the day of Qiyamah, millions of people daily will be on the mizan of hasanat of Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu ta'ala an. That's a legacy. That's a legacy. Every time you watch Haramain Sharifain and you look at Madinatul Munawwara, there's no space in the masjid. Millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people performing multiple salawat every day. Since 1400 years ago when Mus'ab radiallahu anh passed away, imagine how rich he will be on the day of Qiyamah. Bilal radiallahu anh was placed under a rock, Allah took him to the top of the Kaaba. Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anh was stripped of the riches of the world, but Allah will definitely make him amongst the most wealthiest of people in Akhirah. Imagine the whole of Medina from his death till the day of Qiyamah on his mizan of hasanat. What a legacy. What will your legacy be? What will our legacy be? That's the question. How are you contributing to the ummah? What's your contribution to the ummah? In which capacity are we contributing? We make dua to Allah that He allow us to be people that, they say that don't swim against the flow, don't swim with the flow. Muslims are those who change the direction of the flow. To the heart of Allah, to the love of Allah. We make dua to Allah that He bless us with understanding. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.